Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Son of Grace podcast, where every single week we do our very best to help you, our church family, dive deeper into community, making sure that no one walks alone. Guys, we're fresh off the men's retreat. How are you feeling?
Whew, it was great, but it's exhausting. And so it's a good exhausting. And I think the emotional give that we put into that weekend is really good for the guys and good for us personally. But it's emotionally draining because you're sharing a lot and you're listening a lot and you're encouraging a lot. And so a lot of planning. Thanks to Jeff Brabbit for putting a lot of this together as far as
Snaps for Jeff. Snaps for
oh
Jeff.
man, just the logistics of the hotel and lodge and stuff. But it rained the whole weekend basically. We did get our hike in, which was fantastic.
It was good.
Our sunrise hike. But it was really sweet time just hanging out in the afternoon with the guys, playing card games and just chilling. It was great.
Gus, how you feeling after the weekend?
Yeah, really good on the community side. On the we talked about fire kind of the whole weekend, what it is to like create that fire and stoke that fire. And anytime you come off a retreat, it's like, man, you try to get out with some momentum. For us, I think we're kind of tired because we helped plan the thing and run the thing. But what I was hoping for and what I heard from the guys was they're coming out energized and ready to roll and ready to hopefully apply some of that stuff back. But you don't get a lot of opportunities to just spend 3 days with the people that you minister with and two. So just learning people's backstories and everything's relational context and relational credibility in the church, right? If we do disciple making well, it's all relational credibility. So learning people's stories, telling our stories, and just buying that relational credibility only helps the church in the long run. So I love that.
Yeah, it's good.
I was also super excited this weekend that as a church we got to host the football team here for a mother-son dance. There was well over 200, closer to 250 moms and sons. It was
seems like a packed house.
It was a packed house. It was standing room only, and it's just one of the benefits of being a church that's for the community is that we get to love on our community in such an intentional way, and lots of positive feedback about the space and the place, and all of that is because of you, our church family. So thank you so much.
The DJ name, right?
I did. DJ Tony Tome.
There it is.
Right. Get it, Tone.
Yeah, I know. Two-tone Tony?
Tone.
Yeah, that's good.
Here's how I DJ'd. I put into Chat GPT, give me a playlist for a mother-son dance with a bunch of young athletic males and a bunch of 30 to 45-year-old moms. And it came up with something that I said it needs to go for 2 hours and I just laid out all the parameters, and it was a pretty good thought partner.
Yeah. What was the best song that got the most energy in the room?
Well, energy in the room. That's a different versus participation,
okay,
right? So
participation.
The cha-cha slide really crushed it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The cha-cha slide was super energetic, and the other one that the boys really loved was, actually it was "Don't Stop Believing."
Really?
By Journey. Everybody started singing it, and everybody
was
it's classic.
Yeah.
Right. It was one of those. It was a generation gap.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I felt a little bit like you.
Oh, did you?
Except, not at all. You've got a lot more equipment, and you're better. The transitions were hard. And
did you do slow dancing?
I did 3
songs in a row, or
no? I put one. I just split up the 2 hours kind of in thirds.
Okay.
And said, here's one for the moms in the beginning. Here's one for the moms in the middle. And I basically just got on the microphone and I said, guys, grab your moms, pull her out into the dance floor, and give her what she wants for Mother's Day, which is time with you. So,
Sweet.
I know.
Sweet. Yeah, that's nice.
That's it.
Yeah.
So,
can I give you my biggest pet peeve with DJs?
Yeah.
Slow dancing. I feel like they do a slow dance song and then that's it. And then you're right back to speed stuff. And I'm like, we just got in the mood. Like, let's do a few slow songs in a row. So
I think the mood for this dance was
I totally get them with the moms and teens. Totally. But
there's an art to it for sure.
There's an art
to it.
There's an art.
And the goal is like mitigating the energy all night long, not tiring people out on the dance floor.
Sure.
This podcast going a whole different direction now.
We are
not tiring people out on the dance floor, not using all of your party dances in a row because you've got nothing left to pull people back to the dance floor with. You get them out there, you let them have fun. You wait until the energy starts to die down. You pull out a banger, and get them back on the floor.
Yeah.
Then you start to lose energy. Then you go crowd participation song, something with the dance. then you go slow dance to bring in multi generations on the dance floor, and then there's just a whole thing. It's constantly adjusting.
Is there a class for this or what?
Oh, it's still taught, man.
This
Or
is-
there actually are, yeah, but
This is Dusty GPT right here, man.
Yeah, no,
then you
kidding.
start listen, I can show you how to layer, like, you isolate the vocals from this song, you put it over the beat to this song, create a new one, remix right there.
All I had is Spotify. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
Well,
You
you
could have-
can
I would've
see
even-
Dusty's passion right there.
You're good at it. You're good at it.
Great. Dust O'Donnell.
It's fun. We're doing one this weekend, so I'm back at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So late. Why
Why?
can't we have DJs in the morning, right? Like, that's really what I need.
No, I don't like that.
You know,
I'll take
that's a
late
good
over
idea.
the
Yeah.
I'm used to it like that.
That was a great podcast, guys. So
Okay.
that's that. You can email us.
Hey, I got an idea. Before we jump into today's content about reproducibility, we need you to do us a favor. We're trying to make some decisions this summer about what to do with the podcast. Dave, as you know, is going on sabbatical, and so the question is: should we continue to podcast with Dusty and I? Should we B, try to interview some folks, or C, take this summer off? Right. So keep it the same. Do some outreach kind of stuff and talk to different people, or C, take the summer off. So I need you to do me a favor and either email, text, call us. If you're one of our faithful listeners, we want to give you a chance to form the summer of the podcast. So let us know. Tony, Dusty at centervillegrace.org. Don't really email Dave.
No.
It's really just Dusty and I get to decide. He'll be on sabbatical. So it'll be good.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We'd love your feedback.
Yep.
All right, let's jump into the actual sermon this week. This is the R in prison. Would you take us to the P and the R?
Well, P is for personal. We talked about the first week, and that is the idea of relationships and individualizing. Just the idea of really getting deep with somebody. You have to get personal with them. And Jesus made disciples one person at a time, and he got personal, he got intimate, vulnerable, all those kind of words available. And so we talked about that the first week, and then Sunday was reproducible, which is so important when we're talking about disciple making. I mean, each of these are incredibly important. You can't.
And the hard part is that when we talk about the idea of a prism, you can't separate out
Right.
any part of
I
it.
mean, imagine taking purple out of the rainbow.
Right.
Like it just doesn't work very well. It needs all the colors. So, reproducible is so important because this is to reach the nations. This isn't going to be a one and done kind of thing. This needs to be something that can be imitated and copied and reproduced over and over again to reach the world.
Yeah. When you think about reproducibility in the lens of disciple making, at what point in your journey, because you've been a Christian for a number of years, when did you realize that reproducibility was important? Because for me, it was much later in life. And I kind of started the sermon off by talking about one of my greatest failures as a leader after doing a life group leader training and no one coming up to actually want to be the next version of a leader. I was like, man, is this even working? What was that kind of moment for you?
Yeah, honestly, it was interacting with life groups in a couple churches ago. So this would have been probably 2012, 2013. When we started talking about life groups and the problem with life groups of like, hey, everybody wants to grow healthy. They want to grow together, but they don't always want to multiply. They don't always want to reproduce because there's a pain that comes with that. So like my assumption was always, hey, if it's healthy, something healthy is going to grow. And that is true, I think. But we don't always talk about, but then the growing thing at some point matures and multiplies. And it's still a pretty recent phenomenon for me. And it's the hardest part, I think, is trying to make something reproducible. Same thing when we have our disciple making relationships. It's easy. Well, not easy, but if you invest the time, it's easier to take somebody really deep. It's harder to get them to then turn that energy and go and take that mission on their own shoulders and go and find somebody else because people never feel fully equipped. Like that's kind of what we sit by. It's like, when do I know if I'm going to be ready to reproduce this? When do I know if I'm ready to go find my own person? And if you keep asking yourself that question, the answer is going to be never. Sometimes you just have to do the thing.
Yeah. I think the difference between an event and movement is the reproducibility part, right? And we were trained to create events. At least
100%.
in seminary.
Yep, 100%.
It was like this is how you make great events, and once an event is done, it's done. But they're expecting another great event next week or whatever. But yeah, movement is something that can be transferable and pass onable, and that's what we were not taught.
Yeah, one of the things that I talked about in the sermon was this idea about generating ministry versus doing generational ministry.
Mhm.
And I hope the nuance wasn't lost. I tried to convey it as best I could, but both are important, right? Having those events, they don't come without return, right? There can be fruit in the events, right? And we do events here. We're not going to stop doing events.
The mentor retreat was an event.
It was an event,
Yeah.
right?
And it creates some fire, some passion, but we're not expecting the guys to go out and reproduce a men's retreat on their own,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things about the way that our church is set up is this idea of we have a pretty well defined discipleship pathway. And at its core, a pathway is designed is a series of events that hopefully lead us into disciple making relationships so that we can then do generational ministry from that. So it's almost like an offshoot of our pathway is disciple making. And so I'm wondering if you could kind of take the church family through a pathway if they haven't heard it lately or need a refresher. If you were like, man, I want to get connected here, maybe you're new. What's our pathway look like, and where do we hope to pick people up for disciple making along the way?
Yeah. I mean, so I think right off the bat, within a good pathway, you're going to pick up people at every stage of that pathway. So, like, you don't create a pathway to be cleanly followed and make sure everybody only follows a certain way. You want a lot of entry points along the way.
Well, on ramps.
Yeah, you need on ramps everywhere because everybody's a little bit different. We're going to have people in our church that want to jump in and serve before they have any relationships. You got
Right.
people that just want to attend before they'll get into a life group. So, our pathway is kind of designed on paper to go from big to small. So big is like, hey, I check out the church website. I probably look at the Facebook page and just see what the church is doing before I ever step foot through the door. We want to create a great experience. You're going to make a decision in the first 7 seconds on the property, whether a place is welcoming or not. You're going to create that first impression. And then we're going to be a part of the corporate gathering, which is our biggest weekly rhythmic event for spiritual formation, just the gathering of the saints together. As we go a little bit smaller, then we want people to come to what we call Discover Grace, which happens in kind of 2 phases now. The first 4 weeks happen at Pastor Dave's house, where he really gives the mission of the church, talks about who we are as a disciple making church, how we're different, what our pathway is. And then from there, we started a launch life group, which we actually just kicked off this past Sunday, which was really cool. And sometimes we pick up people right there for the first time that didn't come to those other previous steps. That is how it works. But then we take people through 8 to 12 weeks of spiritual formation and really give some intentionality and build community. That's that smaller community. And out of that community, we hope that you get more connected to the church. That propels you to want to serve. Serving's open any of those steps, but that's usually where people will plug into service coming out of that starter life group. And then from there, we want to push people into, once they built the connections and relationships, then we talk a lot about disciple making. And I know, Tony, you you have the disciple making kind of seminar that happens between those
absolutely.
2 steps that I forgot about.
Well, it happens in the midst of all of it, right? Is that we try to set a date where people might want to attend and kind of get connected, and it helps because disciple making language is different than a lot of language that we use, and so it kind of helps define the glossary of terms. And we'll have one of those events coming up by the end of the series, probably in early June, right? Disciple making 101, and it kind of gives a more tactile approach to how we do this. One of the scriptures that I used this week was John 17, where Jesus prays for the believers. When you think about that text, and I know you didn't preach it or really have a chance to study it, but when Jesus prays for those believers, he says, my prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. What's your hot take on that text?
I just love that's like the passage we know that Jesus was praying for us.
Mhm.
It wasn't just for the disciples. And I know sometimes we can get into this, well, Jesus did this for just the disciples and only for them. And his expectations for them is different than his expectations for us somehow because they're different. But here you see it, what he wanted for them is what he wanted for us. It's the same thing. And I love that Jesus was thinking, again, generations and down the road and how to reach the nations. And he had a broad vision of the church. I mean, what a big vision to reach the nations for him in disciple making. And I just love the fact that, yeah, he was praying for us, like specifically that way. So it was great.
Any hot takes on the text?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a legacy prayer. It's a future legacy prayer. It's like when we talk about vision and why people are compelled to attach themselves to vision. Like, I think Jesus knew that right there. He's like, hey, I've got a vision for where I know the church is going to go and what the future is going to look like. And he's praying for that picture before it's ever formed. So like even for us as leaders, like, hey, we're trying to paint that picture before it's ever formed, believing that God's going to do something amazing in generations to come because of the seeds that we're working on planting right now. Right? We might not get to harvest those, but we get to sow those seeds and we get to plant those seeds. Like that's our job. So it's a beautiful prayer. It's a unifying prayer. Like it's, we call it a lot the great high priestly prayer is kind of how it's described in Scripture, because that's the vision of the future of the church that Jesus knew. And he was the reason for it, but he also knew what was coming.
That's so good. I think one of the things that I love about the idea about reproducibility is that not only are we reproducing Jesus's love in us, but we're also reproducing the tools that we use to follow Jesus in other people. So it's a both and, right? I want to help reproduce Jesus's love in the world, and I want to equip people to do that. One of the things I said in the sermon is that I'm not trying to build a house, I'm trying to build a carpenter when we talk about reproduction, right? And what I mean by that is that this idea that it's not an event. It's not like you build a house, when the house is built, you're done. But rather, when you're a carpenter, you build a series of houses. When you think about tools in the disciple making process, what do you think of?
Yeah, I think of how reproducible that strategy is, versus how Jesus could have done a lot of things, and he could have done a lot of things differently.
Could have gave us a handbook,
He-
right? Like you could have just been like, here's a
Yep.
PDF that you can download, right? Like,
Yeah, and he did do that. You think of the carpenter analogy, and Jesus, of course, used the fisherman analogy.
Sure.
I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to catch fish for you. I'm going to make you fishers of men, kind of thing. I'm going to develop you into this different person. And so, I think tool-based strategies is so helpful to think through, because you can catch fish a lot of different ways. You can build a house a lot of different ways, but it's you always need tools, and tools are just basically an extension of yourself, right? It's not you doing all the work, but it's not the tool or the machine doing all the work either. It's a partnership. It's an extension of you. And I think having that philosophy has been so helpful for me.
yeah.
Man, it's like, nope, we're not giving you just curriculum, like it's not program based. We want you to even develop your own tools, which is great. Because, we haven't, we have so many things at our disposal now that we can create so many awesome tools, but to have that tool based strategy, I think, is helpful, because you can pass that on, just like tools to your kids. You can pass that on, but tools change over the years too, and that's okay. But you're still using tools.
Favorite tool, and take scripture off the table because that's obviously the foundational tool for all of it. But outside of scripture, favorite tool.
Favorite tool. I mean, it's not so much a tool, but it's more a skill set. But I'm going to view it as a skill, as a tool, right? Like the greatest tool I have in any time to do disciple making, and I'm not great at it yet by any means, but I'm working on it, is just listening to somebody's story, building the relationship, and trying to figure out where they are. Because this is the only kicker with the tool is like, hey, there's different tools that work for different projects, right? So like until I know what the project is
Sure.
and who that person really is, it's like that's going to determine what tools I have to use. So I have somebody who's really extroverted, who's really high intensity. I'm going to pull out a different set of tools to give them because I know they're going to be on fire in certain ways. If I got an introvert like myself that's coming in, like we're going to go a lot deeper, a lot quicker, and we're going to sit. We're just going to sit in a different place. So it's all about the strategy of the person. That's a great way to not answer that question, but it really is true because you can't do it one size fits all.
Look, question asking is a
That's
great
what I was
tool.
going to say.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
the tool in that is the question asking. Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah.
I would say for me, it would be the wheel. It's the first tool that was really introduced to me, the first tool that I memorized and could draw out on a whiteboard or on a napkin or something like that.
Sure, that's a great starter tool. I mean, it's a great diagnostic.
It's a
tool,
roadmap
foundation,
too, right? Like it's got nuance.
Yeah, I'd say the prism tool. No, I'm just joking.
Copyrighted. Trademark.
Oh, that's not nothing.
Yeah, I like the wheel tool as a great starting point, because that's something simple that everyone can do. The bridge illustration, I think, is also a great diagnostic tool. It's a way to share the gospel, but it's also a great way for people who haven't said yes to Jesus to help them. Like, where do you put yourself on this bridge between you and, are you over here just by yourself, or are you, how close are you to God, if there is a God? And so, I think that's a helpful starter tool as well.
I also really like the PRAY acronym or the ACT acronym
Yeah.
for for prayer and just kind of what that looks like. Those are both great. Pause, repent, apply, yield, or adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication. Just things that, I like tools that have a little stickiness to them,
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good. Closing thoughts.
Wow. We talk about generations. Like I just don't think a lot of Christians in America think generational anymore. I don't think culturally we don't think generation. It's words are tough.
Words are hard.
Generationally,
They're really hard on Monday.
they are hard on Monday.
Generationally.
Much anymore. We are such a fast-paced, changing culture where there's such a gap between generations now, as far as because of technology and other things. I don't think we think generational as much, and so I think there's something lost there because, again, we can't reach the entire world without generational thinking. It just won't happen. So we have to think about who am I pouring into so then they can then pour into somebody else. It's not just about me. I'm not on an island somewhere. It's not even just about the person I disciple and I did it one and done and I'm check that off and the event is done kind of thing. The to-do list is done. No, when I started thinking about generational stuff, I'm like, this is a lifelong endeavor. This is a lifelong endeavor, and I can do this to the day I die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say what's really helpful for me is to think of myself like Abraham. And he was talking about that. Like, I want spiritual descendants who have been influenced generation after generation by maybe a relationship that I had with somebody, the way I poured into one person, who then turns around and pours into these two people, and they turn around and pour into these. And like that's the project that we're called to. Like, the project we're called to is never done.
Yeah.
Disciple making is never a done thing. We never hit the mark and like, hey, we did it, guys. It's a lifestyle. It's a constant way of just investing in people relationally and building those influences for a lifetime. I think about that with my kids. It's like, hey, I don't just want a great relationship with them right now. I want to work with them now in a way they're going to look back in 50 years and remember the moments we had together, remember the lessons that were taught. So always looking as far ahead as I can possibly look and saying, how does what I do right now affect 50 years down the road? Yeah. And that's how I really think that's how ministry is meant to be.
I say one more thing as I think about it. It's so convicting to think about when Paul says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And like when you're sitting down with somebody, you're really hoping they're seeing Jesus in you. And man, it's convicting to think what is of me is that can be copied that is of Jesus. I don't want people copying the junk. I just want people seeing Jesus parts and then copying that. And so, that's so for those people who are like, well, that's why I don't want to do it because I don't think I'm worth following. I would say I'd push back and go, I'm sure there's stuff in you that is of Jesus. If
Jesus in you is worth following.
That's right.
That's right.
And so allow that to shine and be honest about all of it, but just make sure, hey, this is the parts that we're wanting to copy.
Yeah, and here's the cool thing. At the very least, if you're honest with them, they will emulate your honesty.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I don't have my stuff together.
Right.
They're going to remember that you said, in authenticity, I didn't have my stuff
together.
together. And that's still a great thing to pass on.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of those things is like, hey, disciple making isn't a ministry of the church. It's an identity of the Christian. And so reproduction for me is when I know that I've actually made a disciple. When someone owns that, like for me, that's the bar, is that you're not even really a mature disciple until you've made a disciple who's made one. So super convicting, always a process, ever leaning into it, always messy. But the goodness of God is in it. And that's what I appreciate most.
Yeah.
The fullness of life of Christ for me has come through disciple making, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's our podcast for today. As a reminder, please let us know what you want us to do with the podcast over the summer. We want to hear from you, our church family. Thank you so much for being here, for subscribing. Share this episode with a friend, maybe somebody who you're in a disciple making relationship with. And remember, no one walks alone.